Thank you. I hope so. You all done with your lunch. And again, I welcome everyone to the fifth day of third session of today's FDP. So obviously, this third session is related to ethical issues on research, and it was supposed to be taken by Dr. Pratika Mishra, associate professor from our University School of Management. But unfortunately, she's not good on health. So this session will be jointly taken over by Dr. B. Pandya, assistant professor from one of our sister concern, and Dr. Netravati, assistant professor from the School of Commerce, Presidency University. So I welcome B. Pandya, Bharti Hari Pandya, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
A warm welcome to you, sir. And I'll hand over the session with a brief profile of yours. So Dr. B. Pandya serves as an assistant professor in Center of Management Research and Ethics at completed his master's from NIT. He qualified UGC NET in the year 2013. He has also done faculty development programs from the prestigious IIM Ahmedabad in the area of pedagogy and research methods. He has delivered few invited sessions and guest lectures. So his teaching area are HRM, organizational behavior, research methodology, corporate communications, and many more. So his research interests are in the area of again HRM, organizational behavior, crowd shaping, etc. He had published around 7 research papers in reputed ABDC and web design journals, apart from presenting his research work in reputed national and international conferences like IEEE, IEEM in 2017, Singapore and Pan IAM in 2019, Pan IIT 2018, and many more in his credit. So I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. So over to you.
Ma'am, I think the initial part of the this discussion will be done by Netravati ma'am, and then I'll join in the upcoming part.
Netravati ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we have Netravati ma'am here. The first she'll be hearing there. So I'd like to brief out the Netravati ma'am and welcome her.
Thank you, ma'am.
Um, so Netravati ma'am, she's an assistant professor in Presidency University and she's a passionate teacher. She has her PhD in human resource area and has been awarded doctorate in the year 2018 by Bhartiyar University, did her master's in MBA from Reva Institute of Technology and Management. She has a work experience of 10 years in teaching and research. She's a certified career counselor and has been trained with genetic brain profiling by esteemed institutions Midna, the Global Coimbatore. She is passionate in creating youth leaders and entrepreneurs, and then counseling for youth and professional through the genetic brain profiling. So lastly, she has addressed the people from diverse background through various training programs, workshops, and seminars. Welcome you, ma'am. And
And
over to
thank
you.
you so much for the sweet introduction of mine. Thank you.
Over to you, ma'am. That can take the session.
So please confirm if the screen is visible and whether I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So most of us are thinking, I'm a very good person and why I have to know about ethics, right? I'm giving a statement that most of us would think I'm a very good person and why do I have to know about ethics and why I have to inculcate ethics in research, because this is a social research and I won't be harming anyone, and if it was a scientific research, probably there would be a involvement of human or animals, then there would be a question of ethics, and there could be a question of harming being. Okay, so if as I am a social researcher, I won't need to learn ethics, or there is nothing to do with ethics in my research. Okay, this can be most of us. Even I had this question when I had to study ethics. But ethics will play a very important role in conducting a research. As a social researcher, there is lot of confidentiality that has to be maintained, lot of integrity that has to be considered, and we also have to take care of individuals' dignity. Okay, while we are conducting a research. So hearty welcome to you all for this session. So ethics in research. So I'm Dr. Netravati, as I was introduced. So now we are understanding the difference between values, morals, and ethics. And see, most of the time we have this question whether values, morals, and ethics are different, or there is a dilemma between all this, like what is value, what is morals, and what is ethics, and how we can inculcate ethics, and how can I be a ethically imbibed researcher. Okay, so just have a question. What do you do when no one is looking at you? Okay, or what do you do when no one is observing you? Okay, so you will meet a person, a real you, when you are alone, or when you know that there is no one looking at you or no one is observing. Okay, so that is a real person. So just inculcate or just connect with the research. If there was no one to find out, okay, whether you have fabricated, whether you have falsified, or whether you have misrepresented, what could be a research quality? Okay, what could be your research quality, and what could you have been done? Okay, if no one was there to identify the false or misrepresentation or the faults in your research. Okay, so just think of it, and now you have to take care of every line, thinking that every line is read, okay, by our next generation. Every line is read and understood, and also checked on the truthness, okay, by our guide and the university also. So the thinking, keeping these three things in your mind, so we are supposed to make a publication or write a research paper or thesis. So let us understand what is value, what is morality, and what is ethics. So value is basically a belief, okay, or which has an emotional investment, where our family plays an important role, the values of the family and the peers and the neighbors and the educational institutions which we have studied. Okay, all this will have an impact on values. So all our actions will be depending upon the values that we have inculcated. Okay, so I have given various statements for all this in the coming slides. And what is morality? Morality is always about right or wrong. And if you are able to find, or if you are able to distinguish between what is right, what is wrong, that will be a morality. And ethics is always connected to the values, and it will always say what is good and what is bad. Okay, so what is good to the research and what is bad to the research, and this good and bad will bring out the ultimate results. And always when you do good, the result will also always be good, the outcome will be good, and when you do bad, the outcome is also bad. Okay, so these things we have to keep in mind. So I'm giving some statements with reference to values, morals, and ethics. So if you look at the statement, just look at these statements and connect it to your research. Okay, so values, a person who values integrity, okay, will always admit he has stole a piece of candy. Okay, so just like this, if you are valuing your integrity, we will always say from where the data is collected, just connect with the data. Okay, so from where the data is collected and how it is used, and value of friendship, our own integrity, and the value of the relationship with the respondents and various other people around the research, and healthy lifestyle, okay, which will help us to be more active, okay, which will help you to become expert in whatever subject you are thinking of. And the person who values success Okay, so about your research paper or the thesis, you will spend late nights, okay, irrespective of what tiredness or whatever other work you have. Obviously, you will spend late nights or more hours on the research. And whenever you have commitment, instead of giving up, okay, on a particular paper or the research, you will always take through. Okay, so I have given a simple life examples like marriage, success, or healthy lifestyle. So we can always connect these to research. And morals is whether it is good or bad. So it is bad to steal a candy. Okay, then you will come up with the answer, or you will come up with the statement, I will not steal. Okay, so helping friend is a good thing, so it is good. Okay, whenever you have to keep up the relationship with the people who are into research, okay, you will always give more time and be very good person, okay, or be very what do we say, reliable person. Okay, so it is bad to skip workout, you know it. Okay, so don't ever think that I can outsource something and get the work done. Okay, it will never ever help you. So be an expert in whichever field you are, and working hard is very much necessary. And so being committed. So ethics, ultimately, if we are looking into, so for every field we have certain norms. Okay, so I have given an example of doctor, okay, where they take a oath that they will not harm anyone. And there is a PETA, which is an association which is having a norms on people for ethical treatment of animals, how animals has to be treated. And just like that, employees will sign a contract or sign a code of ethics, okay, which will help him, or which will say he will keep up all the confidential matters and will not steal anything from the workplace. And just like that, lawyer will also have bound to be ethical to the clients, okay, which will not put him in any other ethical any other condition which will harm. Okay, so as a researcher we are supposed to take a oath, okay, that I will inculcate the ethics in my research. And there is the outcome of the research will also be ethical, and it is always a truth, which will always have a truth outcome. Okay, so this is ethics in research. So here we are understanding why ethics in research has become so much important, and from when, how seriously it has to be considered. So in the Indian context, in the fag end of 20th century, most of you would be knowing. So the whole quality of research is coming down, declining, and there are so much of unethical practices in the research. Okay, and the whole process of the research, and there are very few highly indexed sources which you find. So these unethical practices have made lots and lots of changes, or lots and lots of differences in the whole research area. Okay, so this is the reason. So maybe there are various reasons that people have adopted this unethical practices. So one reason can be for your PhD, your publications are very important, and for your increment, the publications would be very important. Or for the academic career, being in a position of a teacher or a guide, your publications is very important. You may not have time, and you have adopted some ways. Okay, this can be one reason. And there are various predatory journals. There are more than 300 predatory journals, which they have also have some targets to publish. Okay, and they are publishing without maybe a good peer reviews and all. So this can be another reason. So if you have seen, in June 19, 2019. So there was an article published in by Punjab University, and they raised the concerns, okay, about the research, the wrongful or falseful research. And there from the IICB lab, okay, and IIT Dhanbad, there were 14 papers which was rejected. And recently, if you see the drone Pratap incident, which was actually the whole drone concept was copied, and later on he told he have went and presented in the country called Japan, and it was all proved wrong, okay, or false. So these are many reasons that ethics should be considered very seriously. And so there are many attempts to minimize the unethical practices like NFA, USA, UNESCO, and the WHO had made an attempt. And just like that in India, like UGC, ICMR, ICAR have framed their own policies. Okay, and we have addressed ethical issues in science and in the social science also. And there is a curriculum and the course which is developed for graduate and undergraduate level of instructions. And there is one course especially for the MPhil and PhD students, okay, to bring more awareness. And there are many articles written on articles written on ethics in research, okay, to bring out more awareness. And if you look at this, UGC and research, UGC have brought a major revolution in ethics, okay, and plagiarism is one of the important factor in ethics which we have to speak. So they have given various degrees of plagiarism and the percentage of plagiarism, and according to that there are results that you have to take care of, like there can be a guideship not allowed, like up to 10%, there will be no penalty, but after that like you have to withdraw the manuscript, or your guideship will be cancelled, and for 2 years and 3 years. So this has become what a major revolution in ethics, we can say. And it has also set up CARE, okay, which is called as Consortium for Academic and Research Ethics. Okay, so here we will find out there are 2 groups for the journals, and under these 2 groups, and there were many journals which was removed, okay, after finding out that it is falsified. So this is the major reason that ethics has been considered very seriously, and we have to inculcate ethics while we are doing the research. And why ethics? So as long as we live a life, okay, as long as we are having a professional life, we have to take care of it, that it has to be a good one. Okay, so ethics is the meaning of ethics. Let us understand. It is a Greek word, okay, which says it is a character. Okay, so it is our responsibility to keep or have a good character. Okay, and to inculcate this, to inculcate this, we are supposed to have certain principles that has to be followed. So what is that? There are various dilemmas. If you see, I'll be giving an case on dilemma, what dilemmas we can have. So ethics covers the following dilemmas: how to live a good life, okay, that means how to adopt ethics, okay, and our rights and responsibilities, how to define the inner and outer boundaries, and how to understand the norms in ethics, and the language of right or wrong, okay, the language which we are using, what is right, what is wrong, and what is moral decisions, like how to distinguish between good and bad. Okay, only when we have the right knowledge we'll be able to define or distinguish between the good and bad. So we will always have the dilemmas and how to bring out. So when we have the right knowledge, we will always come out, we can always come out with the dilemmas and do more research on what to adopt and what not to adopt. So approaches, if you see, meta-ethics, normative ethics, and applied ethics. So meta-ethics is more of a moral judgment, and normative is whether it is right or wrong, and applied ethics is controversial topics. Okay, as I told, whenever you have a controversial topics or applied ethics which has to be considered, you will always go and understand the other spheres of it. Okay, for example, you have a particular topic, whenever it is a controversial topic, you will understand other spheres of it, which broadens your knowledge. Okay, so always go for applied ethics and understand the various other spheres of it. And whenever you are making a statement or fact, if you are understanding, I have given a particular statement here. So if it is wrong to murder, okay, which is a moral, okay, realism, and you disapprove murder. So the statement will be like, I disapprove murder, and whatever feelings, okay, which is emotionally bound, you will talk about I am down with murder, or you will come up a statement in the next stage, don't murder people. Okay, so with this don't murder people will become your value, and all your actions will be with respect to the statement which you have come up, and your behavior will be on this. See, I was talking about ethical dilemma, and this is one case, okay, which you have to just understand. So Teresa was born in anaphylaxis, genetic brain disorder. So here the kid will be, or the fetus will be lacking the major part of the brain, which can be a skull or some part of cerebral also. So this is a defect. Okay. So then parents decide to donate her organs to help children's, okay, who children who doesn't have a particular organ, and let the other kids or fetus or the infant survive. Okay, so look at the dilemma for transplant. The benefit of argument, the people who will support the transplant plant will be saying that Teresa, or it can be done, okay, which will not harm anyone. Okay, and against the transplant will be saying don't use others as means only. Okay, the statement can be like this. So for the same situation there can be two different statements, one will be supportive and one will be non-supportive. So always, most of the time, you will be we will come up with such dilemmas, and whenever you are able to have a dilemma, or whenever you find a dilemma, always you have to come up or go with more of a knowledge, and go with uh, discussions, okay, from the with the experts, so that you will come up with a right ethical policy. And why ethics in science and research will be our next learning. So there are several reasons that we have to adopt ethics in research. So one is that we are supposed to promote knowledge, promote the knowledge, truth, and avoidance of error. Okay, so our ultimate reason, or our ultimate objective of the research is to develop the knowledge, okay, and come out with the truth, okay, and avoidance of error or zero error. This should be our outcome, or this should be our objective. And we will also supposed to be prohibiting the fabrication, okay, which is making up of the result, or making up of the facts, and falsifying, okay, giving the wrong or false information, or misrepresenting, giving a wrong information also, and with consciousness or with an intention. Okay, so to avoid all this, we are supposed to promote, or we are supposed to inculcate ethics in research. And since it is a collaborative work, okay, a lot of people will be involved in it. Like you can say your guide, okay, say your respondents, and say your statistician, or many other institutions which will be working with you. So keep up the trust, accountability, and mutual respect. Okay, as I was saying, individual dignity is something which is very important, and when you are able to keep up that, okay, you will be able to inculcate the ethics. Okay, and see, we are most of the time preoccupied with our own privacy. Okay, our own in our own privacy of information. See, whenever you are supposed to give information to Aadhaar card, you will have a question. Whenever you have a situation to give information to bank people, okay, you have a question whether privacy will be kept, or whether confidentiality will be maintained. And whenever you are supposed to give information to your insurance, okay, you will have a question that whether there is a confidentiality that has to be maintained. And I am sure most of you would not be choosing net banking or any other services, okay, which is online, just because you have to keep up your privacy. So when you are thinking so much about your privacy, think about the privacy of the respondents also. They will have a question whether the confidentiality will be maintained, or the confidentiality will be considered or not by the researcher. So in such a case, understand the dignity, understand the concern of others. Okay, so you would be taking information from some of the institution. Okay, consider the confidentiality of the institution also, or you will be working with many big organizations, so they will have some key resource factors, key success factors, and there is a confidentiality which is maintained with them. So how to extract that and how to present it? Okay, so there can be lots and lots of questions as a social researcher. So first thing is that you have to understand what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. So understand, I think I always have that empathetic nature. Okay, so you being at that place, what you would actually do. Okay, whether you will give the information, and most of the time you will be like, what I will do with such information. Okay, don't I have the credibility? So credibility will matter only when you both are known to each other. When you are unknown, credibility will not be a question at all, or credibility will not come into picture. So in such a case, to build that confidence, or to build that mutual respect, what steps you have to take, you should always be taking. So as a researcher, how should you behave? Okay, how should you your conduct should be as a researcher? You should always have that integrity. Okay, so I will give only one statement: practice what you preach. Okay, so you say something and you are doing something, will never help. So fulfill all your promises, obligations, and your agreements. Okay, with the sincerity and consistency. All your actions and thoughts should be according to your promises, and be very honest with collecting the data, research, and with the result. Don't ever make up, or don't ever fabricate, don't ever falsify. This will actually uh, reduce the value, okay, which will have an impact on the whole research or whole thesis what you have made. And objectivity, so don't ever go with biased experiments. Okay, you don't ever give your own opinion, don't ever have that prejudice of giving a, statement. Okay, while giving a statement, so be very clear, or read, improve your knowledge, and have a competence, improve your expertise. So I am sure most of you who have been here for 5 days, the only reason is that to improvise your expertise. I am so thankful that you have taken this step, and be very careful about what you're doing, and what information you are generating, and from whom you are generating, and how it has to be maintained with confidentiality. And if there is, obviously you will be sharing some information, or you will be sharing some data. So whenever you are sharing, make sure that it will not be misused. Okay, and sometimes we will be dependent on some other experts also. Make sure that these data will not be shared unnecessarily and misused in any cases. And be very open to your uh, research or the tools which you have used, and be very confident to answer whenever you are asked a question or something, or whenever you are asked to explain about your research. Be very confident, and see, whenever we have that openness, no, we will have more confidence. Okay, so be very confident about that. And legality, so look at all the laws that governs your topic. So as I said, different topics will have different law that, or policies that will be governing. So take care of all that. And confidentiality, as I said, there can be uh, lot of information that you shouldn't be sharing, like military secrets, or patient records, or applications, or sometimes the copyrights also. Okay, so all these are the confidential information which you are not supposed to share. And non-discrimination, so never ever discriminate against anything. Okay, irrespective of whether it can be gender, sex, or ethnicity, or race or religion. Never ever discriminate. And whenever you are discriminating, again it is biased. Okay, and respect for intellectual property. And not only this, give a respect to your own writings also, because that's your brainchild. Okay, So whatever you are writing, whether it is a research paper or an article, or you're writing for a journal or a thesis, as you should also respect the intellectual property of others and give the same respect to your own paper, okay, and maintain that authenticity of your paper, okay. So think that every line is read by someone, think that every line is questioned by someone, think that every line will bring a value to our next generation. Only then you will be able to write a good paper. And the responsible publication, be a responsible researcher first, so that you will bring a responsible publication also, and have a social responsibility, as I was saying. So anything what we give, okay, to the society today, okay, including your journals or papers or articles, it will always have an impact on future, okay. So think how many literature reviews you would have been reviewed for writing one paper. Just like that, your paper will be reviewed by someone, your paper will be read by someone, okay. So have that social responsibility, that it will always be helpful for next generation or the present generation. They will always use your writings, or they will always use your literature, okay, for various benefits, okay. Keeping in all this in mind, give the right gift to the society. And animal care, as I already told, there is a the whole institution which is considering the care for animals, okay. There is no harm, there is a rule that there shouldn't be any harm for the animals. And human subjects protection, so maintain respect, confidentiality, welfare, and dignity also. So whenever it is a clinical study, okay, so how this was brought into consideration very long back, there was human embryo which was cloned, okay, for one of the research, okay, and it was considered to be a major impact or major fault. Okay, so after this, the human subjects protection was considered very seriously, and a lot of other regulations was brought in, okay, to maintain the confidentiality, maintain the welfare and the dignity of the human beings. So consider the protection of individual dignity and the respect, okay, and that should be your priority while you're writing the research paper. And whenever you're going for any controversial writing, consider or bring out the right facts, okay. So sometimes you have a paper which is having a controversial fact, okay. So you should always have all the facts which is determined to that, which is connected to that, so that whenever someone is questioning you, or whenever there is a statement against it, you should be able to prove, or you should be able to give the right statements, okay. So these are some points which I wanted to say and explain. So if you have any questions on this, I am happy to answer.
So hope so there is no any doubts or questions. Thank you, Netravati ma'am. Thank you for being with us. So now I'd like to welcome and hand over the session to Bhartiya Hari B. Pandya sir. So welcome again, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Over to you, sir. Thank you.
So at the very outset, before beginning my session, I would like to thank the organizers, especially Dr. Vishal Shukla, for providing me this opportunity to present my views and the sessions regarding the ethics in research. And so at the very outset, I would like to say that the things and the concepts which I will discuss will include the meaning has been already discussed by ma'am. And now, why do we actually need to do the ethical research and how to do it? Now, that is one part of the discussion which will be done by me. And the latter part which I will discuss is regarding the philosophy of doing the ethical work. And that philosophy is not of recent times. That has been explored by certain philosophers by John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham. That one I will go, and later on I will discuss about the current academic scenario. Already ma'am has discussed certain aspects of it, but I will take certain data regarding it, and we will explore the current research, the pressure which our country has and the overall world has, and later on we will see the types of the plagiarism and how to deal with it, and what is the seriousness of the plagiarism. And apart from that, at last I will discuss about certain suggestions from my side, which I have got throughout my experience, that how can we write a paper better, and we can consider the ethical values. So that was the outline of my presentation. So I thought to discuss it beforehand so that the participants must be clear. So once again, I thank all the organizers for giving me this opportunity. So the first question which comes to our mind, that why do I need to do ethical research? And the second thing, how? Now, as they say that if you are not, if you don't understand the law of the land, so that doesn't mean that you are innocent. So as a researcher, it is our responsibility to understand that what are the various ethical aspects related to research, since we are in this academic and research career in certain capabilities or certain, you can say, considerations. Some of us are faculties.
Dr. Pandya.
Yes, sir.
Can you please put your PPT in slide view, in view mode, presentation mode?
Okay, okay. Sir, is this okay?
Yeah, now it's okay.
Yeah. So, so I was discussing that why do we need to do the ethical research and how. So basically that will be the outline of the discussion which I'll be doing. So I will start this presentation and this discussion with a meme or with a, you can say, scenario which is going on around us. I request all the participants to go through it and read it once. That what was the research scenario back to a few centuries and what is the current scenario now. Do we find certain things to actually ponder upon, that are we actually doing the correct research? Are we doing the ethical research, or we are just doing it for the sake of publishing or for the sake of being into the research and the academic circle and for the promotion and for various other things? So in the 18th and 19th century, the researchers, mostly of them, means I'm not saying it's all or none. So most of them, they were actually serious about the research. Whereas in these days, means it's not my view, it's a view of the, you can say, certain researches which have been done regarding the plagiarized content and regarding what has been taken from anybody else. So that number is rising. Why is it so? And also the falsification and the data correction which was mentioned, that is even a huge issue for us as a researcher and as a academician. So coming back to the point, that we all know that what is research. I need not tell you all that we as a researcher and an academician, we are contributing something new to the already existing body of knowledge. So basically it is our onus, it is our responsibility that since we are in this domain, then we need to contribute something new to the society. Since we are using the taxpayers' money in one way or the other, either we are in the government sector or in the private, so somewhere or the other we have the responsibility of giving something new to the society in form of research, and in that ethics plays a huge role. We'll see how. Now, coming to the point which I said, that regarding the philosophy of doing anything, why only research? So the utilitarian view and which was like proposed mostly by Jeremy Bentham and Stuart Mill. Now, what does it say? Basically, it says that anything which is being done or is being thought for is for the overall happiness and pleasure. Now, here comes the point that, okay, what is right and what is wrong? What is ethical and what is unethical? Now a question comes that if something which we are doing, if it promotes the overall happiness or pleasure, but the overall the very basic premise or the content of it is wrong, will it be considered ethical? I would like to throw this question to the audience. Would any of one like to answer? I won't name any participant, but I would just like to know your view that anything which is for the broader benefit of the society, but even if it is wrong, then will it be ethical?
No, of
Will
course
be
it
correct?
won't be ethical, sir. I don't think so. No, like Germany, what Germans did during the Second World War, they
Yes,
had
yes,
come up with a lot of medicinal values which were of lot of benefits to the society, scientific
yes.
research, medical research, but that was done in a very torturous way, and definitely that is not at all ethical.
Yes. Basically the Holocaust which was there, right? So that can be justified by the local government, but not as a whole by the world. And that is what means the other side of the debate says that, okay, utility is one side of the coin, but we always need to see that whether it is right or wrong in its basic premise. That is the understanding which we need to have in that regard. Okay, so this is the one side of the coin, where the propagators of this theory, they say that whatever it creates the overall happiness or the pleasure, so that should be considered as correct. And then if in that case some individuals or some you can say small units in the society are harmed, then that should be not taken into consideration. Whereas the other side, the deontological ethics, it says that the premise should actually be correct, right? That the morality of the action, that whatever is being done, then the action itself is right or wrong under a series of rules that should be actually seen and should be under the scanner. So in this debate of the publication and whether it is ethical or not, so we need to always try to observe the difference between this utilitarian and the deontological. Because somebody can argue that, okay, if I actually do the correct research and if I consider my action always correct, so maybe it will take a huge number of years for me to complete the research. Is it even feasible and practically possible? At times it is not. So the overall conjecture and the inference which we can draw is that there has to be a balance between the two. Now, balance in the sense that the harm should be not in the terms of somebody's personal harm. Okay, that can be related to the time aspect or the lack of the resources. Now, I'll just take a couple of minutes to explain the example which John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham had taken to differentiate between these two types of the ethics. Now, there is a very typical case, and that is very true in itself, that 3 crew members were in the ship in the seas, and there was a turbulence in the sea, right? And somehow they could not return to the shores. They were basically Britishers. They were from Britain, so they could not return to the shore till the time which was planned. So the food which they had for that number of days, the reserve was over. Now what needs to be done? So in a turn of events, it was seen that one of the sailors, his health was deteriorating since he had the sea water. In spite of the others saying that please don't have it, it will harm your health. But he didn't agree to it, and he was the youngest, and he actually had this salty water, and as a result of that, he fell sick. Now that led to a change of events when there was a severe lack of food, and when they entered into the third or the fourth day, a sense of cannibalism entered the other sailors. That can we have him as food under the circumstances? So here comes the part of the utilitarian versus the deontological. Obviously, the actual turn of events were that they had him for their lunch and dinner. Yeah, so they actually had him for the lunch and dinner. Now, morally and ethically, is it correct? It is not, obviously, because it comes under the category of murder. You can't have somebody for your food. But when we actually put the scenario or under the situation, then it turns on the side of the utilitarian. That okay, for the larger benefit of the group, and since we had to return back and there was the lack of the food, and overall the logic which they gave in the court, because this was actually tried in the court. This actual case, it has its presence in the case studies of the legal system of the UK. So there they said, okay, that anyhow he was dying. So is it correct that anyone who is anyhow dying, so can we actually have him for lunch or dinner? That is wrong, right? But seeing the circumstances and all, so somebody can debate. Now, why I have mentioned these two philosophies or these two ethical ways, because we as a researcher, many times we are like we face certain situations where we have to take a decision, and at times there are certain wrong aspects, maybe certain unethical aspects which we have to take. But is that correct? Actually, it is not. So that was my thought process. So any of you has to say anything in it, or any response to this case which I have presented?
So you said that those sailors who were there, Britishers, they didn't return to the shore. Then how this
They did return. No,
case
no,
went to the court?
no, no. I think you have missed. They would not have returned if they would not have the food.
Okay.
Yeah, they actually did return, and when they were asked that, okay, where is the third one? Then they actually narrated the story, and then they were put on trial.
And so what
So
was the judgment, sir?
judgment was that they were found guilty. This is a very classic case which has been discussed, and if some of you want to like listen to more of such lectures, then there is a Professor Michael Sanders. I think you all must have heard. He's a very famous professor of law, and his lectures are somewhat visible and present in the YouTube. So you all can go through it for the further clarification. And he has actually provided the view. The name of the series is Justice. Now, justice regarding life, justice regarding the type of the economy the country has taken, then justice regarding the relations, then justice regarding what money can buy, that what should be the limit, and then various others. So there are around 13 lectures which he has given, and that is the only freely available lecture in the YouTube. So if anyone has the interest in it, they can go for it. Is it okay, everybody?
Yes, it is okay.
Thank you. So next we move to a more psychological aspect which we read in OB, that some of you might be knowing that about the approach conflict, avoidance conflict, and the approach avoidance conflict. So any of the participants, they have any idea regarding this? I would just like to ask any of the participants. maybe some of you have an idea of this organizational behavior theories, which is being taught and actually used in the corporate organizations. Now, basically, it is regarding that when we have options in our life. Now, what when about the approach conflict, that when we have two positive things to choose from, then we have a dilemma, we have a conflict. Okay, which one to choose? Then the next one is regarding the avoidance conflict, when things are out of our hand, both are negative, what to choose? And in case of the avoidance and the this approach conflict, it is about the same thing, but there are positive and negative aspects in it. Now, what is the correlation or the connect between this and the research? Let me discuss, because we as a researcher, when we start our research, we have so many you can say pathways, or you can say roadmap in front of us, right? Do we take primary data? Do we take secondary data? Which one will be biased? Which one will be more accurate? Which one will be easy to publish? So certain such questions are there in our mind, which actually create the same kind of a dilemma or conflict, which is being mentioned in these theories. Let me actually give an example that one of us is doing a research in the area of employee satisfaction and retention, and he or she has read certain researches previous hand, and in the literature he has found certain value of the satisfaction. Now when he or she is doing the research, now at that point of time, they have a very limited number of the responses on first hand, and on second hand, they are seeing that the value which they have got from the limited responses, that is also not very close to the value. Now there is a dilemma, and hence the idea of the unethical practices, they actually creep into the mind of the person. Okay, can I just substitute the value? Falsification, which was discussed beforehand. So these psychological or the behavioral aspects, that needs to be catered and taken care of by us. Obviously, in case of this approach and the avoidance conflict, that is when our research is being truly done by us, then how do we actually have to present it? Which part we have to not mention it in detail, even if it is correct. So that coincides with the part of the report writing, and how do we actually present our work. So I hope a few of the participants have understood this. Is there any query regarding it? Monica madam, Muthu Lakshmi madam, Aurobindo sir, Mainavati madam. I'm just trying to be interactive, because by that we will actually understand that what actually goes in our mind while making the decision regarding the ethics, because our thought process is actually the, you can say, empirical or the practical part of what we actually do in the research. So assuming that there are no queries, I'll move forward. Now, I need not mention and then discuss about this situation which all of us are in. That is a very relevant thing which we all are experiencing in our daily lives. And Madam has also explained, and I hope the other spokespersons, they have also discussed about this. And this is something which we are experiencing in our daily lives, because we are in this profession. It is about to publish or to perish. If we don't publish, then we don't get the promotion for the further job. We don't get a raise in the salary, right? Many times, if the employers are quite strict, they don't retain you. Why? Because you have not published. Because that is the requirement for the NIRF, for the NBA, for the NAC, and for the various other accreditations. So that is the current pressure in which we are living. My colleague, my friend is publishing. Why not me? My junior has got published 2 or 3 research papers. Then what about me? So all this pressure can be actually be diverted into a eustress, which is the positive stress or distress, negative one. And if that negative one goes into a very means bad direction, and without the effort of the researcher, then they actually encourage the shortcuts and the wrongdoings. And that is the point where this predatory journals, they get the customers. So that is the word which I will use, because somewhere or the around it is about the demand and supply. Since there is a demand, so there is a supply. So I hope few of the participants will agree with me in this, that we researchers and we academicians actually create the demand for such predatory journals to operate.
Yes, sir, you're correct.
Isn't it? Am I true?
Yes, definitely. Yes, because we publish it, that is why they are flourishing. Otherwise, if
Yes,
we don't
yes,
give our
yes.
papers, they don't pay for that. How they would
Yes,
come
yes.
up.
So basically they are catering to the demand which is created by us. By us means the ones who actually publish in those kind of journals. Now, in this regard, I just remember means keeping in mind all the you can say faith and prayers of all the sections of the society regarding these fake or untrue this religious leaders. Now, from where actually do they get the followers? Obviously, there are many good ones whom we need to listen. But what about the ones who don't have the requisite knowledge and the experience and the skill to actually solve your problem? But since you are in problem, so we will reach out to them. So that is how the demand is created, and thus the supply acts in. Right? So do you all agree with me? I'm just having an opinion. Sunita madam, Supriya madam. So I hope my point is being understood by most of you, right? That since we create the demand for such you can say services, so that is a result that they actually sprout up and they capture the market. Now, I would like to protect certain data regarding this. That the Nature Index analysis, it rates India at the 13th place for its high quality scientific publications. So that's on the positive side, good side. But what about the negative side? That a huge number of the predatory and poor quality journals are found in India. So that is how you see that both the good and bad part are there in our country, and we need to follow the good part. Needless to say. Against
Many times the thing is this, that we cannot know also that whether these journals are good or not. Like say, suppose many a times people,
yes,
suppose I am finding a good journal in management,
Mhm.
maybe Scopus Index or something, it becomes difficult to find out. So
I
that
will I
is why
will
maybe.
I will actually talk regarding it, that how to identify the correct journal, whether it is properly indexed or not. So that's not very tough to find. Let me just answer your question. Now, since UGC, this care list, I think you must have logged in and found that there are 2 categories of the journals which are there, the A and the B. So we can just enter the ISSN number of the journal or the name of the journal, and we can see whether it is UGC indexed or not. Deepshri, did
Yes,
you?
sir.
Understand?
Yes, sir, that is true. So, but suppose I have a good paper written in banking, in the sector of banking, and I
Yeah.
want to find out a good Scopus Index journal which would publish my paper as soon as possible. Since they have quarterly publication or half yearly publication. So, in that case, sir, how can we find the journal?
See, in this regard, you need to actually do some kind of a research. What kind of research? That you need to go to the journal finder and find the correct journal for your work, where you actually upload your abstract and they will suggest certain journals. Right now, out of those journals, so that you keep in one list, then another method of finding a befitting and a target journal can be that from the literature which you have like studied. So where was the work published? So can you publish in one of those journals? That is also one of the prospective. Third one, like your sources and your networking, right? You can actually get to know that where your colleagues, where the other researchers in your areas, they are actually publishing. So after clubbing these prospective journals, right, what you can do is you can go to their websites and see that what is the frequency of their publication. Like one word you said, that I want a speedy and a quick publication, right? Everybody
Yes,
wants,
sir.
that is true.
Yes, sir.
But in that haste of being of publishing quickly, you don't want to end up to a fake journal, right?
Definitely.
So that is the concern, that after you have a list of the prospective journals, you can go to their websites, their link, and then you can see that what is the average time of the response, what is their frequency, right? Is it annually, is it quarterly, right? So obviously the ones which are quarterly, so they have a more number of the publication cycle than the yearly ones, isn't it? So that is how you actually zero down from a huge list of the prospective journals to the one in which you actually want to publish. Understood, Deepshri?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Deepashri?
Thank you so much, sir.
Sorry,
Yes.
yeah. So that was some data regarding it. I don't want to go into details. This all we know about that. What are the numbers of them and all. Now, like I said, that this UGC CARE has actually created a revolution, because before this 2019 June edition, before it was a huge database, and many fake and this predatory journals had found their place in it somehow, in which we could have just given the money and our work would used to get published in 15 days. So that's a very that was a very sad state. But the good thing is that these days that has been partially, or you can say in the maximum manner, taken care by the UGC CARE. I agree that already that although there are certain limitations which are there, that may be there, but overall the system has been revamped, and just by going into the website of the UGC CARE, we can see that whether that journal is there or not, and also we can check by the ISSN number, and also there is a tab for the fake journals, predatory ones, so we can check that okay, which is the recent ones which have been removed by the UGC. Okay. And like this, and an interview was given by Professor Bhushan Patwardhan, who actually had taken the initiative for this fight against these fake journals from the Savitribai Phule University, right? And the last line, what it says, that is the reason that this predatory journals, they find the way into the developing countries, because there the demand is very high and the research output is increasing many folds.
Sir,
This is the,
excuse me,
yes,
sir.
tell me.
Sure, you said that all those journals which were once in the UGC listed journal, UGC CARE came later on, but first it was UGC enlisted journal or not. So now when they have been reduced, suppose before till June 2019, whatever publications had been there, they
Yeah.
were enlisted in UGC, just UGC, and then UGC care list came, and a lot many journals were rejected.
Yes.
In fact, in UGC enlistment also, these changes took place every 6 months or 1 year, I think.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
sir, those who have published it, like even my paper was published in
Mhm.
Management Accountant Journal of Cost Accountants of India
Yes.
Institute. So that was removed post 2019 June,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
mine was published earlier to that when it was enlisted. So would I get a value, or like is my
See,
journal publication now be considered a fake, or that in predatory journal, or is it could be considered
yes.
valuable?
This is the like the problem with the UGC CAT, that they keep revising it at a very frequent interval. But as your question was that will I get the value for that? Actually, that depends on the employer. Employer, in a sense that if the advertisement says that that you have to enter the name of the journal which is in the current UGC care list, then you cannot enlist it, right?
Yeah,
Or
but sir, when it was enlisted, then only I got my paper
that
published.
is the
Otherwise, I
point.
wouldn't have sent it.
I agree, but what can be done in this regard? At the most you can do is that you can write it and put it down, and that may be judged further by the person who is screening the application. So that is what maximum can be done. So in this regard, means the future, you can say, precaution which you can take is that only try to publish with the reputed publishers, Elsevier, right? Taylor and Francis, Sage, InderScience. Understood? So once you actually publish with these, so they don't means have the means least of the probability to get rejected from that list, at least. Even the case which you are saying, that is even true with the ABDC journals. One of my research papers which got published in the ABGC C category, InderScience publishers, so that is not in the current list. So that is not my fault, right? Means the year in which I had published it, it was there in the list. So like I said, that actually depends upon the employer, that how they actually see through it, and what is the like demand and supply, right? Khalid sir has said that the score will be accepted, right, sir? And based on the process, right? Khalid sir, you want to add anything, sir? I think sir is not able to unmute. Okay, so I will continue the discussion. Okay, so this is the website, just for the sake of it I am showing. Now coming to the part of the plagiarism. Now we all know that it is very harmful. Okay, means that may lead us to trouble, but at least we should know that what are the various types of the plagiarism, right? So direct one, I need not tell, the word to word copying, verbatim part, that you have copied somewhere from the text and you have, as it is, you have pasted in the your current article. So that is the verbatim plagiarism. And the ones certain changes you have made, but the thought process is same, and if you have not mentioned the name of the author in the reference, then that is somewhat it comes under the category of the this plagiarism, right? And paraphrasing is also considered to be a plagiarism if the source is not given. So many of us they think that okay, I will take the concept from any paper, research paper, and write it in my own words without citing the author. That is also considered to be plagiarism, right? Next comes the part of the self plagiarism. Now this is somewhat a debatable one. Now the problematic part is that okay, some assignment which was given in a graduate school or a PG one, now that should not be repeated again. So that is one aspect of the plagiarism, right? And the other one of the self plagiarism, that okay, what we as the research scholars we face in our life is that certain research papers which we have written, and when we write our thesis, so obviously we will take certain aspects of the the work which we have done on our own. So that is the reason that many of the universities and the institutes and the organizations, they actually consider around 15, 20 or 30% of the self-plagiarism, because that is your own work and you have taken it in your thesis from your paper. So that may vary from the organization to the organization, right? Then comes the mosaic plagiarism, which is basically unintentional in nature, means it has not been done knowingly, but for example, you have copied like some part of the text in your own one, and you have given the source, but the content which you have copied, that does not match with the quotation. Understood? The part which has been like quoted and the part which has been referred in the in-text citation, there is a mismatch between it. And the last one is the accidental plagiarism. Although accidental, this will actually count in the plagiarism part. Why? Because accidents are accidents, so that brings a loss for everybody. Right? It's not that we can say that okay, that was accidental in nature. Now, for example, some work was done by Sharma and Khan, and we have taken their this part, but in the references section we have written some other title, Dubey and Singh. So that is actually accidental in nature, right? But when the in-text citation and the citation and the references at the end, when they don't match, so that is also a case of plagiarism, but somehow that can be corrected, because in that case the intent of the researcher seems to be correct, but somehow they have like done it accidentally. Okay, is there any confusion between the types of the plagiarism? Because we all should be very careful while writing the references, and these kind of accidental or the mosaic plagiarism, it occurs when we do the things manually on our own. So that is the reason that we should use certain citation and the references software like Mendeley, right? Some of you might have heard about it. So Mendeley can be used. So by using this softwares or apps like this Mendeley and Zotero, so we can actually minimize or maybe lessen this kind of the plagiarism, in which we have cited somebody in the text, but the in-text citation is there, but the reference is not there. So that is actually wrong, and with the help of technology we can bring down this kind of error. Now, certain news related to the plagiarism. Now, these are true paper cuttings which I have taken. Now, what can be the extent of the harm which any plagiarized work can do to our careers? That is actually very sad, and to know that people at certain high authorities, they are also even engrossed in cases of the plagiarism, and at times somebody can say that okay, these are politically motivated, or maybe not, who knows. So not to get into that you can say debate, we should know that this plagiarism, even if somebody has done in his master's days or his doctoral days, it may haunt him or her later in the life. So we should be very careful about it. And with the onset of these so many good softwares which do check the plagiarism in a perfect way, like the Turnitin is there, so there is a very limited possibility of escaping the plagiarism. So these were certain big news which I found. Now, coming back to the part of the ethical issues, means we all know that what do we understand by the free and the informed consent, that if being a management researcher, I am performing an primary data collection of the observation, that we are getting the data from the observation of the participant. But in that case, is the participant informed about it? Has he given the consent? That should be taken very seriously, right? Then these days we see that in the name of the CRM, this customer relationship management, they take our mobile numbers and our mail ID, and so many messages and mails and repeated calls we get from them, because the data is being sold from one vendor to the another for some very limited and very small amount of money. But the problem is to be faced by us, right? And then one thing which I forgot to tell is that we all should not do the multiple submission in the journals, because if that is caught, then that may lead us and we may be blacklisted in that case, right? It may seem that okay, we can submit our papers to multiple journals and then simultaneously they will be reviewed, but if we are caught, then we might land in trouble. Now this very famous quote this post I saw on the internet, and I thought to produce here. Now what does it say? That okay, we all worry about our privacy against these many things, but what about the social scientists? They take our data and analyze it and bring out something out of it. So that's very you can say dangerous these days, right? Now one more misconception which some of the researchers have, that okay, if once my paper is published, then it is published. I have got the DOI, now nobody can do anything. Now the research paper which has been published, it can be retracted from the website. Just by typing at the DOI number, your employer or in the future, they can check whether your paper is still there in the database or not. Whether certain cases of the plagiarism or the conflict of interest or some negative views are not there. It might have passed the stages of the review, but still it can be retracted. I hope most of the participants must be knowing it regarding this retraction phenomena. So it's not that once it is done, it is done. It can be retracted back due to any reason. Now, what we actually provide or publish in our research, three categories are there: the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Right? So in the former one, we have like just written what we actually have found in our research, whereas in the second one, we have like partly omitted the part which we think okay might not be useful for the publication, and we have given some limited part, right? And in the third one, this fabrication can be there, and some misleading information has been given, or maybe the significance of the work by the researcher has been explained or portrayed in a wrong manner, right? For example, in the sample and the population study, I can say that okay, that my work was done in a particular area, but what I am claiming that the significance of the work and it can be applied to a greater population. So that is a wrong and unethical practice which I am doing. Since my work has been done in a particular state, so why not I express its managerial implication to the limited state or the limited region which I have done, and not to the whole. Which as a researcher, I should not blow off my level of the significance of the work or the managerial implication, because it will have some negative repercussions in the upcoming time, because somebody else can take up our research and do his or her own one, and at that time they won't get such type of the results, and that will be misleading for them, right? Now, regarding the collaboration, because these days we are so much hearing about the collaborative work. We should be like interdisciplinary, work out with people with from other departments, from other institutions, from different organizations. We should try to collaborate. All that is okay, but there are certain points which should be kept in the mind of the researcher during the initial stages of the collaboration. Now, the first part is about the authorship, that what will be the order or the sequence of the authorship. Now, obviously, it should be based upon how much work they have done or how much they have contributed to the paper. But somehow, certain this seniorship, senior issue and age issue and the power issue that comes. So that should be very properly communicated in black and white between the authors. Then regarding the ownership of the data, that who will be the author, who will collect it, and who is actually responsible for it, right? And one more very important issue is regarding the peer review. Now, we should be very careful of whom we are sending our paper for the review. They might be a very good friend of ours, that I agree, a very good senior, but can we rely on him or her 100%? So there comes the part of the trust and the ethicality in the peer reviewing. Many times it has been seen that certain chunks have been taken from somebody else's work, or maybe they have taken it for review and they have published it in a substandard journal, right? Without even the information to the authors. Then the last part is about the ghostwriting in the dark web. That means due to this huge demand in the publication, because this publish or perish, you have to publish, or else you won't get promoted. So this ghostwriting has come up. This who has written the article, that is not known. I have paid somebody. I have asked my friend to get it done. They have done it, but actually who has done it, that is not known. So at the time of the justification, or at the time of defending the work, that can be a great concern. And many times we as a researcher and as a you can say customer, which is a very wrong practice, we get cheated, because that's a dark web. We have given 10,000 rupees to a mobile number. Based on the talk, we have transferred the money to whom we don't know, right? There was a promise of getting the work published, but that was not published because it's a dark web. Where has the money gone? Who was about to write the paper? We don't know. And even if we trust them, so many times that's a problem for us to defend our work, because it's not us who has done the work, right? And there can be certain this conflict of the interests. Many times people give the paid reviews, and they write in support of the author, or in opposite of the author, because they think that they have certain personal equations with them. So these kind of the obligations, they should be that should be seen beforehand. Human subject research, like I said, that in case in most of these human subject research is done in the field of pharma or the bio field, because in that any of the population is taken for the actual testing of the drug, right? There are certain stages in it, the pharma trials, as we say, right? The first layer, then the second step, third, and the fourth, and after the fourth, that drug is made available to everybody. So in those type of human subject trials, the research, they need to be properly informed, and the consent should be taken very properly. And that's a very legal thing. Now, norms of the ethical and the scientific research by Sieber, he has mentioned that what should be the certain points which should be taken into consideration for the scientific and the ethical point of view to be kept. Now, valid research design, that we should have a good research design so that the part of the unethicality doesn't come at last, right? And the researcher should be competent enough. Now, many times we see that, okay, many of the researchers don't have the basic research etiquettes and the basic research level, or this meticulousness for doing the research, but somehow they are doing it. Maybe they are forced, or maybe they are into it due to any reason, right? So the competency of the researcher, that also matters a lot, because the skill and the knowledge which is required to do a quality research, that is absolutely high in in these days. We need to devote a lot of time regarding this. And selection of the subject, now these are certain generic things, and the compensation for the injury. If in any pharma case, if there is some harm which has been created to the person, then they need to repay him. They need to compensate. Why? Because the subject was a part of their experiment and that has gone wrong. So they are responsible to take care of him physically and medically. So that was the basic part of the ethicality. Now, certain suggestions means just an add-on. This is not a part of the topic which I have taken, but I thought that I can share this with you. Just certain suggestions that that on the left-hand side, the left column, we are seeing that certain criteria are there. Certain, you can say, benchmarks on which the journal actually decides and makes the decisions whether to reject or accept the manuscript. So many times we think that, okay, our language is okay, our literature review is okay, then we have structured the paper accordingly, right? But these are the many aspects. This is from one of the journals in the Indus Science, and I had got a very lucky opportunity to review one of their papers, ABDC C category paper. So finally, I did this kind of a review. So I thought that maybe I can share this kind of a review, and that what are the points which are being seen, particularly by the reviewers. So if we meticulously and point by point see that whether we have catered to all these points carefully, then obviously we will have a much better and a quality paper that will take less time for review, less time for correction, and obviously less time for the publication. So rather than going into the first round, second round, third round of the review and the revision, why can't we prepare it accordingly in the best possible manner, so that the further time which it is required, that will be quite less. And certain more suggestions I thought to put, that the curiosity should be there, the managerial implication, that one punch should be there. Novelty is very important. Then the connect in the flow. Then the manuscript should have the latest references. And like I said, that we should use the certain softwares like Zotero and Mendeley and NVivo for the qualitative data analysis, right? And some plagiarism check. Then this should, and this is the sequence of it, right? Then certain qualifiers, means the extreme ones should not be taken, right? And the reference should be checked very deeply, again and again, that is the researcher making any mistake while matching the in-text references and the references at the last of the manuscript. So that should be checked very thoroughly by the authors, and that is the reason that this softwares should be used, Zotero or Mendeley, and by that we can minimize the this problem of this accidental plagiarism. So that was my view. If any questions are there in this, I would be happily
you have
replying to it.
mentioned.
Yes, please tell me.
sir, you have mentioned that some softwares like NVivo can be used. So that is for qualitative analysis, I guess.
Yes,
But these
yes,
are very
yes.
expensive also. Do you know, sir, any software which is open-ended and we can use it for qualitative review?
OpenSSC, this R can be used. Means a
For
lot of
qualitative review also, qualitative analysis?
yes, that can be done. And Dr. Vishal is an expert in it. Maybe he can comment on this. Dr. Vishal.
Many are saying, Dr. about Vishal sir, that he is an expert in R. Sir, it would be great if you can take one session on R, again an FDP like this, because everybody is saying that you are an expert in R.
R and Python and in all type of the data analytics, sir is a huge personality in it.
I am also IBM certified professional, all IBM products, SPSS,
Yes.
Amos, Watson Analytics, all these. Due to my commitments as a convener of this program, I was unable to take more sessions. Means I only took one basic session. I wish I'll be taking more. Now coming to your question, see, R and Python are open source programs. If you if you learn these, you won't require learn the license of any other software. And these softwares are free for lifetime, R and Python. So either of one. For analytics purpose, I believe R is the best. When it comes to making machine learning models, then Python is good. And you need not. And now you might be thinking that it will require a lot of coding and the things. No, you need not to be from computer science background. I have one of my friend who was a physiotherapist. Right now, he is a data scientist in a big company, Fortune 500 company. It will take some time, commitment to learn this, but believe me, in R or Python, there are libraries and packages which have people like me, or because it's open source, anybody can contribute. Lot of data scientists have created those packages. Packages are nothing but the bundle of codes. So you need not to write all the codes. You need not to reinvent the wheel. Only one, two line of code and calling that package in your R environment, that will suffice. Now, I have already conducted 2 workshops in June only on R. Next workshop I am going to conduct with the Maharaja Agrasen Institute of Technology, Guru Gobind Singh, affiliated to GGS IP Delhi University. That will start from 23rd. So I'll float the brochure in the WhatsApp group that we have created for this FDP. If you wish,
Yes, sir, please do that, sir.
you may join. So from 23rd to 27th, full day I'll be conducting this workshop for 5 days.
Oh, that would be great, sir. And yes, sir, if you have any YouTube channel of your own also, you can please share it with us, sir.
Ma'am, I am sharing all the videos to the same channel. You just scroll on the other videos.
Okay. Sure, sir. Many
Are you
thanks, sir.
getting the link of recordings of these sessions?
Yes. We are doing, sir. And your contributions towards.
That's my YouTube channel where all the sessions I have taken that are recorded. You can scroll through all the videos and see.
Okay, sure, sir. You are doing wonderful job in, taking a research a step ahead for the community, because it would really encourage us to work on that. And especially trainings on R and all are like wonderful, because those are open source software. We don't have to find people from whom we can take these pirated versions and all. So that would be
No.
really very.
First thing. Don't use this word pirated on a public domain. And now it is being
Yes, sir.
questioned. Suppose if you are running any this analysis on IBM SPSS, why I am running IBM SPSS? I am IBM certified trainer. I have license from IBM. If your university has not purchased, or previously IBM was not giving license to the individual people, but now they have started giving. Previously they used to give only institutional license, and for in a block of 10 licenses. So every 10 licenses will cost you 3 lakh plus GST.
True.
Whereas for individuals, they have started giving at the rate of $99 per user per month, which is used for an Indian person to means afford it. So now, if you are doing on IBM SPSS, some reviewer might ask you that whether your university is having this license, or if it comes into the knowledge of IBM, they can sue you also. So please, at least on this
No, that's what I'm saying, sir. The SPSS is expensive. The university has every time we have to go there and take it, and in this pandemic, it becomes really a pain. But if we
Okay.
know R, then we do not have to be dependent on SPSS.
Yeah, you know, if you know R, you need not to dependent on any other software.
Yes, sir. That is why I sincerely want to learn
No
R.
EViews, no EViews, no Stata, no SPSS, no AMOS, nothing. Only one. You master one. That is R, and it will be helpful for you. That's open source, and lot of codes are there. Whenever you feel like you are stuck somewhere, you can get to me. And once you have created the codes for yourself, right? You can save it and use it on another data set. The same code, only you have to change the path of the new file that you will be using. So it's one-time work, but throughout the life you can use those codes.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you. I'm looking forward to attend your next session, sir.
Okay. I wish I could have delivered few sessions for you people, because most of you who have joined here might have already attended my previous sessions, but due to my commitment as a convener, I have to keep up the show running, coordinating with all those people, sending you data sets, getting data sets, sending you. Before sending, I check that data set, that whether there is any error or what, or recording. So I was unable to take the session for you. But yes, in future, of course, I'll plan something like this. So now I would like to thank Dr. Netravati and Dr. Bhartari Pandya,
Thank you, sir.
uh, who has accepted my invite on a very short notice. This session was supposed to be taken by somebody else, but that faculty suddenly, because you never know when any exigency will arrive. So she felt she was not feeling well today, and at the last moment I have to go to Dr. Pandya and Dr. Netravati. So I thank both of them from the core of my heart for accepting my invite, and they have addressed something which is very important and contemporary in today's research world, that is ethical issues in research, which is a must have, must know for every researcher, because somewhere we do errors like this, which can spoil your work, which can spoil your paper getting retracted from the journal, and some legal cases against you also, because sometimes we commit these errors unintentionally and we are even not aware of these. And if you see, since last 4 5 years, even some vice chancellors from big universities have been caught in the case of plagiarism, and now are facing legal issues in the courts. Now see the disgrace that they have got, and might be they are not aware of that plagiarism that happened. So I hope that after this session you might have some good takeaway from this session, and I wish you all means very great learning ahead.
Thank you, sir.
Now we will be moving on to our valedictory session. So please, we'll be starting in a minute or two. Please stay logged in.